Hello guys and geeks, it's RudeOnion, and I'm bringing you something a little bit different from my usual uploads. This isn't going to be about gameplay, this isn't going to be about playthroughs or walkthroughs or anything like that. I don't even know what gameplay I'm going to put to this, if any. But I want to talk to something that I find to be very important and which is severely lacking in the community, and that is developer respect. And by developer respect, I don't mean sucking up to developers. I don't mean, you know, just always patting them on the back, being like, oh, great game, you guys are... I'm patting the air in front of me right here. You know, great game, you guys are just really doing your best. I love absolutely everything. I mean, if that's your opinion, by all means, that's fine. But that's not what I'm going to talk about here. What I'm going to talk about is simply respecting developers for the changes that they make in the game, for their opinions, and the answers that they give you when they decide that you deserve an answer. This can go for any mode, but in this case I'm going to talk mostly about Assassin's Creed because, you know, that's really about the only multiplayer that I'm currently playing. So, when you get like a developer like Tim, who's a really nice guy, and, you know, you ask him, oh, well, you know, why did you make these changes? And he decides to answer you and to talk it out a little bit. That does not give you free reign to badger the poor guy relentlessly. And it's not just him, it's other it's other developers as well. Hell, it's developers, like I said, from all different studios across the globe. But this is an issue that gamers very often tend to have. They seem to think that because they make a big enough stink about it, something should be changed. But this is a little heads up for you guys. The loudest is not necessarily the majority, alright? Just because you might bitch the most doesn't mean you're right, and it doesn't mean that anybody outside your little group of buddies agrees with you. Now, in some cases it could be the case. I mean, maybe for earlier games we saw a whole lot of complaints about stuff like Smoke Bomb, you know, about stuff like Mute, although mostly Smoke Bomb, and we saw changes later on. AC4 nerfed Smoke a lot. And this isn't a Smoke Bomb rant or anything like that. I'm actually sorry now that I brought it up. But the point is that developers do listen to the community. It's in their best interest. It's in their favor to listen to the community because obviously they want to sell more games. But the competitive community, or the community on Twitter, or the community on YouTube, it's a great community, but it's not the majority, alright? The majority, believe it or not, are actually people who play casually and don't play a whole lot. Now, I love the community on Twitter. I do. I'm a part of it. I love the community on YouTube. Again, I'm a part of it. But there are some people who drive me nuts, and I'm not going to give all the details of this conversation that was on Twitter just the other day, but it was one thing that really annoyed me, and I've felt this way for a long time. The developers for Assassin's Creed deserve our respect, alright? They've listened to us, and even though I'm not saying by any means that the game is perfect, they've been doing what they can to keep it going. They've been doing what they can to make the community bigger, which doesn't always fall in line with what maybe the competitive community wants, or maybe like the kind of intermediately competitive community wants, but it's what will sell more units. And in the end, their goal is to make the community bigger, not necessarily to get all players to play like I do or play like so-and-so does. That's not the point. The point is to make the community bigger, and they've been doing that. I'm pretty sure the community has been growing ever since ACB, and that's a wonderful thing. So I know I've been ranting on about this for a little bit now. I'm going to show you a few screenshots. I'm blurring out some names, but honestly you can see why this would kind of start to annoy me, and I ended up having to cut in. I said a few things that I thought made some sense. I got a few retweets, I got a few favorites, I got a marriage proposal? But what it all comes down to is that that's my point. Stop blaming the developers for things. I mean, when it comes to the developers, I bet you anything that a developer would love it if their game had zero lag. That a developer would love it if matchmaking worked every single time. That a developer would love it if there were never any issues and all players played to at least a manageable level of stealth. You know, like maybe if there weren't players that, you know, ran all over the place and stuff like that. If we didn't have players like that. If everyone played the objective on all modes, that would be a fucking dream for me too. I would love that. But reality is that it's not going to happen. The reality is that there are always going to be players who have a different playstyle than you, vastly different playstyle than you, or players who maybe enjoy, you know, trolling other players, not playing for the objective. And it sucks, but that's the way that it's going to be. Ubisoft isn't going to kick those people out. Ubisoft can't make their matchmaking perfect. And when it comes down to it, people blaming people like Tim for not being able to have dedicated servers. I mean, I'm not disclaimer, it's a little late, disclaimer, I am not a developer, alright? I've studied game design a bit, but I'm not a developer. I've never worked at a studio. But I mean, you'd think that logic would dictate that, you know, I don't know, maybe a single studio doesn't have the choice in whether they, you know, their multiplayer gets to have dedicated servers. I imagine that's something on a Ubisoft publisher level, not, you know, Ubisoft Montreal or Ubisoft Annecy or Ubisoft Idaho or wherever all the frickin' Ubisoft studios are. Alright, that's not something that they decide as individual studios. At least I can't imagine that it would be. Dedicated servers is a huge change, and yeah, I would love that. I bet you Tim would love that too. But, and I'm not speaking for Tim, sorry. I'm not speaking for Tim, I'm not speaking for any other developers, I'm just kind of giving out my opinion, my 2 cents. You know, perfection would always be the goal. Everyone would love to have a perfect game, but again, that's probably not going to happen. Honestly, arguments like this will sometimes make me feel ashamed to be part of the community. Especially on Twitter, because that's kind of where, well, Twitter and YouTube, it's kind of where their arguments tend to come up the most. And I'm just sick of it. I'm sure developers are sick of it. I'm sure developers want to hear what we think of their game. And if it's criticism, sure. I've had a short conversation with Tim. I wanted to know why they had decided to get rid of chases. I miss chases. Personally, I haven't heard from anybody, again, personally, who liked having chases removed. Now, I imagine that there are people who liked having chases removed. I thought maybe there are people who had talked to Tim about having chases removed. Turned out that it wasn't so much what they had heard of from other people complaining about chases. That's not really the reason they removed it. They removed it because they were worried about kind of newbies and intermediate players accidentally spawning chases. And hell, that would even happen to me. I'd accidentally spawn chases. I do feel that they needed to be tweaked. I don't think that they needed to be removed. But again, that's a conversation that you can have respectfully with a developer. That's not something that requires screaming at somebody else. That's not something that requires trollish behavior or really any other kind of dick behavior. So when it all comes down to it, the AC community on Twitter in general needs to grow the fuck up. We are better than this. This is the kind of, you know, pointless squabbling that you might hear like on the YouTube section of a Call of Duty video. Alright? And not something that I would like to hear from Assassin's Creed, which is a game that requires, in my mind, so many different intricacies and know-how to be able to play well. You would think that this would attract kind of more of a grown-up audience, but apparently not. Apparently that's not the case. And I'd like to see a little bit of change in that. If we could all kind of adjust our behavior, stop blaming devs for things that they are not in control of, or for trying to get their game, you know, God forbid, to be played on a wider scale than it is now. Alright? I'm sorry to have to play mom here with this. It's not something I wanted to do, but apparently it's something that needed to be said. Alright? We all in agreement here? We're all gonna behave? Pull on our big boy pants and all act like grown-up people? Because that would be fucking wonderful. RudeOnion out.
Remaining. Double multi-kill.